Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sybil Amuti, and Great Girlfriends, I want to welcome to the show today Dr. Arabia Mollette, who is a New York ER doctor, a frontliner. She's also the host of The Visit, and she is a great girlfriend at the core. When I tell you her story of resilience, her story of growth, and her story of overcoming will just absolutely inspire you and empower you today. I promise. You're going to love this episode. And when you do, shoot your review over to iTunes or drop us an email at welcome@thegreatgirlfriends.com just to let us know what you think about this episode. All right, great girlfriends, enjoy the show. I've learned a little bit about your story, and I know you want to share some of this, but I know that you were a teen mom, correct?
Yes, correct.
And I mean, I was reading your story and I'm like, my goodness, you becoming a doctor and even the doctor persuading you to become a doctor. Do you mind sharing a bit of how there is a God and how people showed up and kind of spoke life into you during that time frame?
You know, and first of all, thank you. I appreciate that you mentioned that because oftentimes when people talk to me, it's always about COVID-19, which is understandably so. I get it. Mm-hmm. But thank you for even acknowledging that part about my life. And so basically, since the age of 5, I've always wanted to be a doctor, but I wasn't too sure what type of doctor or what type of specialty that I will partake in. And I grew up in a very poor family. We lived in extreme poverty, drugs, crack. I grew up during the crack epidemic. So the crack epidemic definitely hit my family in so many different ways. And, I grew up in the South Bronx most of my life. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in the projects and grew up in a household where, my mom was struggling with mental health issues. And my father, unfortunately, fell hard to the streets. And my siblings and I, we had to figure out how we were going to be able to survive throughout all of this. And so domestic violence and other things that took place in the household. And thankfully so that God had helped us to get through all of that as a family. However, the three of the most impactful situations or circumstances that really propelled me to becoming an emergency physician was one, when I was 12 years old, I witnessed my mother attempted to commit suicide. Mm. And when the police, and it was two police officers and an EMT worker, they were all white men. And when they arrived at our apartment, I heard the police officer say to the EMT worker, "Just another nigga." And they just laughed when they were picking up my mother to take her to the emergency room. Mm-hmm. And I was 12 years old and I'm standing there looking at them like, bro, are you serious?
Right.
Like, are you really freaking serious if you just said just another nigga and I just laughed? Mm-hmm. And that was, and that in itself, that stunned me because, you would think that these are the people that were supposed to protect and serve. And then as far as the EMT worker just laughing and making a joke about it, like, you're taking my mother to the hospital. Mm-hmm. And just because she's a Black woman and she's poor and she, attempted to commit suicide, like, it doesn't mean that she doesn't have the right to live or at least receive some sort of respect. Yeah. And that really stunned me. And so eventually my mom was institutionalized for a bit. And then the second incident that occurred in my life, like, yes, as you mentioned before, I was a teen mom, but I had my son, not because basically the relationship that I was in was very abusive. I suffered psychological abuse. I suffered physical abuse, even financial abuse, because if you don't have money, if you don't have support, and I was 15 going on 16 when I met my son's murderer, who is the father of my child. Mm-hmm. And he was a man of twice my age. So he was a much older gentleman. And I was one of those girls, Black girl, lost, ran away from home because my home life was very dysfunctional, and thinking that this man was going to, be my savior. But once I moved into his house because I had nowhere else to go, the daily abuse took place. And eventually, how I got pregnant was he raped me in front of his friends in his home. And I wound up becoming pregnant and not knowing what to do. In my mind, I said, okay, maybe should I go to the abortion clinic or not? I wasn't too sure. And I was very young. And I decided to to keep my son, because I felt like, okay, well, in my young mind, I'm like, oh, well, nobody else don't care, but I have to care. And I have to, this is going to be a child that I'm going to take care of, that will love me back. And I will do everything I can to show the opposite of what was shown to me. Mm-hmm. But eventually, and unfortunately, my son was killed at the hands of his father several months later. Mm-hmm. And while my son was in the hospital, in the emergency room, this emergency doctor, this ER doctor, I remember he was a tall white man. He looked like Santa Claus to me. I know I don't believe in Santa Claus, but that's just the best pictures I could put it. Uh-huh. And he was so kind. He was very, very kind. And my son has suffered several cardiac arrests. And so while I was in the emergency department, this is at a time where there was no such thing as a pediatric emergency room. So it was always like a large room, and kids and adults were seen in the same exact room itself. It's not like how it is now. But this doctor that was taking care of my son, when he pulled me out of the room to talk to me after they had resuscitated my son to basically stabilize him before he had passed away, I'm asking the doctor all these different questions, because although my life has been very dysfunctional growing up as a child, I've always excelled well in math and science. Like always did well in school. I was in the talented and gifted classes. I was in so many different science programs because I knew I wanted to become a doctor. While I'm talking to him, and I'm asking him all these questions about what was happening with my son, the doctor has stopped me. He said, I don't know why God is, man. Mm-hmm. I thank God for this doctor, but I don't know why I'm telling you this and why God has touched me and to say this to you, but regardless of what happens to your son, please become an ER doctor. He said, I don't know why God is telling me to tell you this, but I think that you should become an ER doctor and utilize this situation as a way to motivate you. Now, I've never met this doctor before, and I was looking at him very strangely, but, I just took him what he said. And then maybe like 2 minutes after he said that, the nurse ran into the family lounge room, the family room where they usually, give the news to the families. They ran in and said, Doc, the baby is under cardiac arrest or something like that. So we both ran out of the room. They started working on my son. And then eventually, maybe like a minute or two later, my son was pronounced dead. And it just broke me. And the last situation that also fortified my decision to become an emergency physician was that my youngest sister at the age of 19 years old was shot and killed near her college campus. And a completely different city. This is several years later. My son died in 98. My sister was shot and killed in 2003. And she was in a completely different, near Albany. That's where she was going to college. And they rushed her to the trauma center that's up there, because we from the Bronx, we all from New York City. So they rushed her to the trauma center up there. And so I got on the phone and I spoke with the ER doctor that took care of her and also announced her death. And this particular ER doctor, as I'm asking him some more questions about what was happening with my sister, he said, I'm sorry, I have to stop you for a second. He said, I don't know why God is telling me this. This is a completely different doctor. Uh-huh. I don't know why God is telling me this, but something is telling me that you're going to be one of the greatest ER doctors that the community needs. And he said, please utilize your sister's tragic story as a way for you, to motivate you to become a doctor. And I said, you know what? 98, God, you said that you gave the same message in 2003. You're giving me this message again. And after that, I went on and I did everything I needed to do and became a doctor. And I graduated from medical school back home in the island of Cuba. That's why I got a full scholarship to study medicine. And They paid for my room and board. The Cuban government paid for my room and board, my tuition, my books, my uniform, everything. So I lived in Cuba for many years, and I speak Spanish fluently. And then I came back to the United States and did my residency, completed my residency training in emergency medicine in Newark, New Jersey, and came back to New York, and I've been a doctor since then, and I'm still here.
Wow. Oh my God, your story is amazing. Oh my gosh. Many women take hits, right? This life happens, right? And things and the hits come, but the way you get back up, your resilience is out of this world.
Thank
Out of
you.
this world. And I also want to honor the fact that even during that time frame when those strangers, and sometimes I believe that they can be angels, came to speak life into you in those very dark moments, you were even open to hearing what they had to say. So I got to know, what is it on the inside of you that makes you keep going? What is it that gives you that hope or the desire to even get up, after so many things came to knock you down?
When I was a child, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, Alberta Cook, and I used to go to her house basically almost every other weekend to go visit her. And although she used to drive me crazy and watching her soap operas with her, because it was a bunch of grandkids and all my children. And as the world turn would come on, she would tell us, "Shut the hell up! Y'all better be quiet. Then we'll talk after the program." And so one of the things that she did after her, and it's so crazy that I remember that, but it really was an important moment in my life, because after she watched her soap operas, we will have conversations, and something about the soap opera will remind her of something that our family were going through. And one of the things that she said to me one day after watching all my children with her, she just looked at me, and she always called me by my last name. Because my last name is French and Spanish, but she will always say to me, "Mollette, the problems that you have in your life right now is not permanent. Your problems are temporary." She said, "Always remember to let go and let God." And I took that. I didn't understand what she meant then, but as I became older, her voice will come back to mine. Her spirit will come back to me, and I would just remember those words that my problems is not permanent. This is just temporary, and let go and let God. And even though there were times that I didn't let go and I let God, because I always, I had this bit of a control issue and just trying to control things that were around me. But I was broken by that. And I was forced to let go and let God. And when I finally learned to just let it go and let go of the frustration, let go of my anger, let go of being unforgiving even towards my parents and other people that may have hurt me along the way, this is when the strength and the motivation and the love that I have for people and even for myself to be able to move forward. I don't like to be angry. And growing up, I had to deal with a lot of anger. You understand? Because my family had felt hard to some really strenuous times. Again, I grew up during the crack epidemic. And if you grew up in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, to maybe, you're right, basically late 70s, early 80s. And if you were a young child at the time, you knew what it was like to live in a community that was plagued by that and how devastating that impact has been on Black and brown families. And so because of the pain and having to deal with so much since childhood, since the age of 5 years old, and just seeing so much pain, so much hurt and with my own family, I saw that I wasn't that much different from my parents. You understand what I'm saying? I saw that I wasn't that much different from those that was falling through hard times. And so it was like a checkmate. I had to get checked for that. And so I said, "Okay, God, it's time for me to get the help I need. In order for me to move to this next level in my life, because you have brought me this far, I even been through worse than what I told you on this podcast, to be honest with you. That's just a snippet of my story.
Yeah.
But because of every trial and tribulation and having to get tested along the way, and I'm still here, I made it past the age of 16. I made it past when I was stabbed with a knife. I was shot at before. I was raped. I was physically abused, bones broken, unconscious, I mean, you name it, it has happened to me. And so in order for me to move past that, I had to go to therapy. I had to get, therapy. I had to seek a professional therapist.
Yeah.
I saw a psychiatrist to help me along the way. And she was a Black woman on top of that. This is before when now, now that everybody talk about getting a Black therapist or what. No, this is way before this became, I don't want to say trend, but this has became a topic of discussion.
Yeah.
I was doing that way back then. And I appreciate my life. I appreciate my past. Before I was ashamed of it. But why should I be ashamed? And I'm still here.
What would you say to the woman who says it's too late for her?
Well, I would say this. I felt that way even when I was in medical school. I felt like it was too late. And mind you, I was a full recipient of a full scholarship, academic scholarship to go to medical school. And even though I completed it, but it was during parts of that journey that I felt like it was just too late. And, I'm tired. I'm done with this because it was hard. So I'm not saying that just because I'm in a much better space than where I was before. Dr. Arabia Mollette still sometimes go back to that little child and say, wow, it's too late. Wow, I can't do this. But because of the extensive help that I received along the way, professionally and personally, I am constantly reminded by the universe that it is not too late. You understand? It is not too late. I have a purpose.
So true.
You understand? And that, whatever that purpose is, because I'm telling you, every year it is different for me. Every 5 years, my purpose changed. You understand? I had no idea. Let me tell you something, how real it is for me. When I knew that this year it wasn't too late. Last year, I sat down and I have a prayer altar, and in Spanish it's called Bóveda. And in Yoruba and Spanish just basically means a prayer altar. And I have the pictures of those who have that I love that have passed on, and and things like that. And so I go to that altar, and I speak with God and I speak with my ancestors, and I read passage from Psalms, or do what I need to do to cleanse myself wherever it is. So last year I sat at the altar, and my apartment was quiet. My fiance already had left to work. And I prayed and I said, what's up? Like, I'm trying to be this doctor, be on television, trying to help people in media. And I'm not getting no media. Basically, I would get one media opportunity here and there. But I'm like, okay, God, but you remember when I was 5 and you gave me this dream of becoming a doctor, but you also gave me a dream that I would be on television and actually helping people through television. And, as a physician, what's up? Like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, every time I turn around, I'm getting no, 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 and no. God said, be still. The ancestor said, be still. I kid you not, 2020 hit. Walk into the emergency department that day, the 3rd week of the pandemic. I was asked by the vice president of the hospital that I work at in Brooklyn to do this interview. And I said no 3 times. The guy said, see, you're playing yourself. You need to do this interview. And I'm not over exaggerating. I'm not lying to you to make this interview sound really good. This is the God honest truth. I did the interview, and then so many doors opened for me, because last year I was feeling like, okay, maybe I should just give up this idea and just continue on being a doctor like I've been doing, and just not think about media. But see, had I given up, had I not listened, have I sat there and said, well, it's too late, it's over, let me just go on with my life and feel regretful because I had given up on myself, I wouldn't be on this podcast talking with you. You understand? Right. Yeah. And so it is not too late. And I'm not saying your story is going to be your story is going to be my story. I'm not saying your journey is going to be the same as my journey. What I'm saying is to say you have to sit down and put things in perspective and prioritize what is important to you. What is it that you want to do? It does not necessarily have to be centered on a career goal of mine, or establishing your own business, or even establishing your own podcast. But even spiritually, if you have spiritual goals that you are trying to obtain, And if that spiritual goal is a part of you getting the help that you need psychologically, then do not be afraid to step out and say, you know what, I am going to get the help. And if that help is not up to your standards, do know that you have a choice to seek other opportunities for help. If you don't like the therapist, or you don't feel like you and your therapist don't quite match each other, understand that you have the right to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Like my grandmother said, you have not because you ask not.
Right.
And that's the problem. Sometimes we don't ask.
Yeah.
And then we assume that these things are supposed to come to us, where we have to do the work and we have to put the footwork in and have to ask.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I want Black people and Latino people to understand there's nothing wrong asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that.
So tell me, Dr. Arabia, what is your mission right now as you see it?
My mission right now is to continuously utilize my story to help others.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it is in a book, whether it's on television, and even at work. I know there are things that God had placed in my vision growing up, and even recently, certain things I will accomplish along this journey before I depart from this earth, and hopefully no time soon. Okay, God, you heard that, right?
Yes.
Don't you take me out, okay? But I know that my mission is to help as many people as much as possible. There's only but so much I can do within four walls of an emergency department. But if people can see me, hear me, and really be affected or be impacted by the things that I say in a positive way, and establish a legend, I think I did my job. Because I believe in positive impact. I believe that we should utilize our voices and our talents to make a great impact on the world. And to me, I think that's more powerful than fame and money, is how much of an impact that you left on the world. How many people that you may not realize that you may have helped along the way. It makes me feel good to know that many people when they see me on television, whether it be about the pandemic or other topics, that they reached out to me on social media and said, listen, I've watched you on so-and-so show, and my daughter and my son and I, we all watched you. And it just makes us feel so proud to see someone that looked like me on TV, as a doctor, speaking on things that many of us have concerns and questions about. You helped me to understand what is happening right now. That to me is more powerful than just fame and money.
I love that. I love that so much. And you know what? I want to just tell you, you have blown my mind today. You've blown my mind today in the best possible ways. I came into this conversation prepared to ask you more questions about disparities in healthcare in the African American community and some of those other things. But I think what we were meant to talk about is resilience. What we're meant to talk about is, a blueprint for survival, for overcoming, and a blueprint for locating your sacred space, because you even talk about that, how much you value and treasure your prayer time, and really creating solitude and mental health and all those pieces that so many women are working through right now and really trying to reinvent. And, none of us have a perfect journey, but what we realize is that what I've learned, and I think what most women are discovering more and more, is the more we hear these stories, the more we share our stories and feel empowered by, all the little service roads and highways and bypasses that we have to take, the more people we take to the other side. And like you said, the reason why your voice is essential in media is because you understand that you're a bridge builder, that you're creating space for other women who have gone through the trauma, the grief, the abuse, the neglect, the hurt, whose family story is not one of American royalty. So they've gone through some of those setbacks, and even, the things you experience with your mom being institutionalized, all of that. Those are the parts that make us human to one another. Those are parts that give you a heart for people who are hurting and help you to see people for who they really are and believe in their dreams, because you were seen and someone believed in your dreams. So that was what we were supposed to really, really dive into today.
That's right. And that's how two spirits connect. That's how we
Yes.
connect.
So helpful. Oh my goodness. All right. My last question for you, because I could keep you all day. I want to know, what is it that you affirm, to yourself every day when you wake up and you get ready to go out and do what it is that you're called to do? What is it that you tell yourself?
Oh, I'm fly. I'm a New Yorker.
Yes.
I am beautiful. I am intelligent. I am I'm all that in this, and I'm God's child.
Yeah.
And let
So
go and
good.
let God. And that's what I have to tell myself all the time, to remind myself, even when the little moment of fear creeps in, or a little bit of that self-doubt creeping, that's what I
Mm-hmm.
say to myself.
Mm. So where can everyone find you? They want to connect with you and even thank you for this beautiful time together, because you've shared so much with us. This was great.
Oh, they could definitely find me on Instagram. I'm more so active on Instagram. I'm still trying to figure out Twitter. That's how I'm saying my age. But
Yeah.
Instagram is really where I'm mostly active at, and that's at Dr. Arabia Mollette on Instagram.
Okay.
I am that doctor that will post controversial issues, and let me tell you something. Though those posts will go on for days. Go on for days. And but yeah, I definitely, my page is definitely active, and so definitely people can look me up. I do have a podcast that I am revamping, that I'm hoping to revamp at the top of the year. It's called The Visit with Dr. Arabia Mollette, where I discuss health and wellness, and other controversial topics that surrounding health and wellness. It was a
Hmm.
number of people on my show. Vivica Fox was on my show. Oh my gosh, there was a lot of people on my show. Vivica Fox was definitely one of them. Vanessa Simmons was one. Dr. Dre. It was a lot of people, and we talked about different topics, and just being silly and just being who I am. And
Yes.
so definitely people can find me there, and just always look out for me on media.
Oh, good
Definitely.
stuff. I'm supporting you. I'm rooting you on. I can't wait to hear more of your voice in media. I see it. It definitely belongs. No dream is
Oh,
lost. No dream
oh,
is ever lost. It's
thank
just a matter of
you.
time. Great girlfriends, did you enjoy this week's episode of the podcast? If so, would you please give us your amazing review on iTunes? Every single review helps another great girlfriend get plugged into the podcast, into the community. Speaking of community, make sure you join our Facebook group, The Great Girlfriends. You follow us on Instagram at The Great Girlfriends, and on Twitter at _great GFS. Last but not least, we'd like to thank my amazing husband, Kwaku, Sam and Dilly, and all of you for being a part of the global community that makes us so strong. Please remember to share with your friends. Keep listening and keep being a great girlfriend. I'm Sybil Amuti, and I'm out. Peace.